Welcome to the Zero Carbon Future Pavilion, sponsored by Clean Air Task Force, to this evening's or this afternoon's session on coal to nuclear. We have an exciting topic to be discussing, and we have incredible guests and speakers here to share some of their perspectives. My name is Carlos Leipner. I lead the nuclear program for the Clean Air Task Force. And I'm really excited to be part of COP27 and share some of the insights that we have. So, coal to nuclear. Why are we here and why we need to talk about this subject? So coal, as we all know, still is a significant contributor to the energy system that we have globally. And it's a very important resource and source of energy for us. But it does come at the cost of very high emissions, as we all know. So we have seen an incredible trend of moving away from coal. Many coal plants around the world are either retiring or already retired. In the last 10 years, for example, in the United States, we've had an average of 9,500 gigawatts 9,500 megawatts of coal power being retired per year in the last 10 years. And that trend will continue, and which is good for the environment. At the same time, we need to replace that power with something. And we take advantage of the infrastructure. When you look at all the infrastructure that surrounds nuclear power plant, coal power plants, from the switchyards to the transmission lines, which are more and more important as we deploy new sources of energy. We have heard how difficult it is to get permitting for lines, transmission lines, to the tune of years, right? So if we have, can take advantage of an existing infrastructure, that's also very helpful. So today with us to discuss all of this and how to transition that to perhaps a nuclear reactor to a coal site, we have several speakers here with us. I'll introduce them momentarily, and then I'll looking forward to their perspectives. First, here we have Chris Levesque. Chris is the president and CEO of TerraPower. He actually begun his service with the U.S. Navy many years ago and features more than 30 years of experience in the nuclear field. Prior to TerraPower, he led major reactor build efforts with both Westinghouse and Areva, overseeing projects in both the U.S. and Finland. So we're really glad that you're here, Chris. Thanks for being here with us. Next, we have Clayton Scott. Clayton is Executive Vice President of Business Development at NuScale. He joined NuScale earlier this year, and prior to that, he had a variety of senior executive roles with Framatome, Schneider, and Invensys. He has more than 40 years of very diverse global experience in the nuclear industry. And today he's responsible for the global sales, marketing, and communications for NuScale. Next, we have Eric Ingersoll. We're very pleased to have Eric with us. He's the co-founder and managing partner of TerraPraxis. He's an entrepreneur with vast experience in the development and commercialization of new energy technologies. And routinely, he advises governments and the private sector worldwide on electricity and fuel applications for advanced nuclear, fusion, energy systems, and others. He's a co-founder of TerraPraxis. That we'll hear more about his activities through that. Next, we're very pleased also to host Anna Birchall, a special envoy for strategic international affairs for Nuclearelectrica in Romania. In her position, Anna is contributing to Nuclearelectrica's efforts to promote the company's ongoing strategic projects, particularly with the North American Energy and Security Partnerships, as well as other strategic partnerships. She has over 20 years of experience in law, foreign policy, international relations, and she has held several senior political positions, including the position of Deputy Prime Minister for Romania's strategic partnerships. So very glad and honored to have you here. Thank you, Anna. And last but certainly not least, Elina Teplinsky. She is a partner at Pillsbury, a leading international law firm, where she's the energy industry group deputy leader and a leading member of the international nuclear and hydrogen teams. She's a trusted advisor to nuclear owner operators, reactors, equipment suppliers, investors, and engineering companies. And she frequently counsels on new build nuclear projects, fuel procurements, M&A transactions, and other activities. She's also an advisor to CATF and many others organizations, and is a co-chair of the World Nuclear Association Law Working Group. So very excited to have this stellar group of speakers here with us, and perhaps we have reactor vendors and others here. Perhaps I'll start with you, Chris, because TerraPower obviously has a very exciting project in the United States, in Wyoming, precisely on this topic, and I wonder if you could maybe start us off with some comments around that.
Sure, Carlos, and thanks to the fellow panelists and all you here today for joining. Yeah, TerraPower, as part of winning the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program, which is a public-private partnership to demonstrate an advanced reactor in the U.S., we had to go find a site for our first reactor. So we had won a $2 billion grant from the United States government, from the DOE, and we were looking at several candidate sites, and it was determined we were going to work with PacifiCorp, which is part of Berkshire Hathaway Energy, and PacifiCorp suggested that, it was Gary Hogeveen, their CEO, suggested, let's go see Governor Gordon in Wyoming, because there's 4 retiring coal plants in Wyoming. So that's one important point. It'd be interesting to hear from others that it's not about nuclear displacing coal. Okay, there's a massive amount of coal plants that are scheduled for closure due to obsolescence issues, due to regulatory issues, due to reaching the financial end of life of those plants, and that's the case in Wyoming. So in Wyoming, the situation is there are 4 different plants scheduled for closure. PacifiCorp, who's really a premier operator, non-nuclear by the way, was adding a lot of wind, and as we know, when you add wind or solar, they are intermittent sources, right? And each increment, moving 40 to 50%, 50 to 60, each increment of wind and solar becomes more expensive. It's great news that we're decarbonizing the grid, but model after model tells us the best way to top off a carbon-free grid is with 20 to 30% nuclear. So Wyoming has a really high energy IQ, I would say, because they have been making energy for the U.S. for 100 years. They're a big coal-producing state. And Governor Gordon, in our meeting, we came to him to talk about, in a coal-producing state, we came to talk about building the first Gen 4 reactor on a coal-to-nuclear project. And he leaned into it big time because he saw this as an opportunity not just to replace that coal power plant and to repurpose the staff in a community that was set up for a big economic hit, but he saw it as an opportunity for Wyoming, an energy-producing state, to turn a corner and to be involved in the clean energy transition. And there's stories that aren't so great about technology introduction, right? There's case after case of where different, labor, communities, and others get left behind. We're really excited about this project in Wyoming and about demonstrating natrium, but we're just as excited about, really being an example for just transition. We're gonna repurpose the workers at the Kemmerer, Wyoming plant. Many of the skills you need to operate a coal plant are the same ones you need to operate a nuclear plant. Just replace the heat source. It's instead of carbon emitting combustion, it's now clean fission. We'll repurpose that workforce. It's also a great just transition story for the community because, again, if you compare it to some of the hardship that West Virginia has seen, this community is really going to be able to pivot and get involved with a new technology. And one last group I'll mention, if we're talking just transition, is the the tribal community. In Wyoming, we talk, a lot of us think of different places in the world when we say Holy Land. Well, for the Native Americans, that is their Holy Land in Wyoming. You can't do a construction project there without uncovering Native artifacts, and we have strong engagement with them as well. So really excited about our project and excited to talk to my colleagues here about theirs.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. Exciting things that are happening, and it's good to see projects come out of paper to reality. So that's fantastic news there, as well as some challenges there that we're here to hear more. Next, Clayton, if we could, I guess, go with you. And obviously, NuScale, congratulations. The licensed in the U.S. Achieved agreements now with recently announced with Romania. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the application of NuScale technology to this coal to nuclear subject.
Sure. Thanks, Carlos, for having me on the panel. Chris, a lot of the points you've mentioned clearly, I think we all share. But I think a couple of things that we're excited about is, the first technology that's licensed and certified by the NRC. But more importantly, recently we received a ruling on our EPZ, which is Emergency Planning Zone. So our methodology that we use has been approved by the NRC, and it's in a ruling forward. So it allows us to bring the EPZ down to the boundary. So depending whether it's a 40 or 60 acre site, that EPZ is boundary, which is key from a coal purpose because, typical site is 200 to 300 acres, et cetera. So we can actually put something on the site, still be within a very close perimeter by the asset that we want to connect to at the grid. So that's an exciting aspect that we see going forward. Clearly with SNN in Romania, our first project in Eastern Europe is also a site, coal site repurpose. The site's been chosen, and now they're starting to move forward on doing the environmental analysis, et cetera. So we're hoping that next year at COP in Dubai, we'll be able to give a much more further status on where we are. So that's exciting. In the U.S., there's 33 plus states that have basically put clean energy requirements into by 2050. A lot of them have done their IRPs and they've removed coal, replaced it with nuclear. So, there's 239 plants that'll retire by 2040, which is a significant amount of power. So this is not a small opportunity. This is a large opportunity, and this is a playground for all of us. This is not, hey, one's going to win everything. This is a big thing, and it's the right thing. It's the perfect win-win situation. You get to come in, you get to clean up a site, you get to repurpose the people at higher wages, longer sustainable jobs. You couldn't have a better industrial marriage, in my opinion. So we really look forward to making it happen.
No, that's great points, Clayton. Thank you for that. And we're going to maybe do a deeper dive on some of these as we go on here. But next, to Eric, if you could, I guess, congratulations to TerraPraxis. I guess a lot of recently great news from partnerships with Microsoft and the tool that you unveiled on coal to nuclear too. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about that and the impact.
Sure, thanks, and very happy to be here with everybody. And I guess I'd like to talk about urgency and scale. And we've all mentioned, and you hear this a lot with coal to nuclear repurposing, the importance of reusing the transmission and so forth. I want to tell you a little story about that. So a few years ago, I was working with Clean Air Task Force on a decarbonization model for the entire United States economy. It's a project that ultimately became Decarb America. And one of the things that they asked me to do was to think about what the constraints to the sort of renewables plus energy efficiency, transition might be, and think about what kind of things would help us if that turned out to be riskier than we all would like. So we got the modeler to allow no new transmission to be built, only using existing transmission right-of-ways. And this one change radically reduced the amount of renewable energy that you could build. And right now, we have not been able to build a significant long-distance transmission line in the United States for the last 20 years. So you might begin to think about that, the sort of unfortunate high-risk case that I was coming up with as not the high-risk sort of weird case, but the actual case that we're living in. And the other thing the model did when we introduced this transmission constraint was build 600 gigawatts of nuclear in the United States. Every single coal plant was repowered with nuclear because they all had transmission. And when I saw those modeling results, I realized this idea of repowering coal sites is not like a cool idea. It's necessary for our survival. We are not going to, unless we radically change the way we can build transmission, the only way we will decarbonize the US economy is by repowering all of those sites with clean energy. So this isn't sort of a nice opportunity for the nuclear industry or like good window dressing. This has to become a core strategy for real deep decarbonization in the United States. And the same applies all over the world. So when you have that insight, then what's the next question? The next question is, how the hell do you do that? Right? 600 gigawatts in 25 years or whatever, that's a lot more than we've, I mean, there's currently 400 gigawatts of nuclear operating in the whole world. And so we're talking about needing to build many, many, many times what we've ever built in order to accomplish that. So TerraPraxis was actually formed out of this insight. It was that modeling exercise. That's what happens when you let kind of nerdy energy guys, get too close to the model. But what we realized is we needed to start thinking about this problem from the other end. So what my colleagues here are doing to commercialize the advanced nuclear technologies is absolutely essential. But we started from the other end and said, okay, if you need to repower 2,400 coal plants by 2050, this is going to have to be done in a pretty different way. So we started looking around at the sort of building ecosystem and said, well, where are people doing ultra high-tech, high-spec buildings, but they're doing them really fast, and they're doing a lot of them. And there are several sectors like that, but one of them is data centers. And when you look at the transition that's occurred in data center construction over the last decade, it used to be that little Google would go hire an EPC firm, and the EPC firm said, we specialize in building data centers, and they would design a data center for Google, and Google would build it. And after this happened a bunch of times, Google said, hey, wait a second, why are we paying to redesign the data center each time? Like, couldn't we just have a system and just deploy that system each time? And it turns out that you could do that. And that's in fact how all the major tech companies deploy data centers today. And so we went to one of the leaders in the automation of the design for data centers. They have a tool that you can feed it 1,000 data center sites. It will design 10,000 data centers on each site that you can score. You can then pick the data centers that scored the best on your objective function, and then it will design those data centers, finish the design, a fully detailed design for that. And that whole process that I just described takes 1 day. So when I heard that, I said, well, maybe that's the kind of thing we could use to repower 2,400 coal plants in the time that we have. If we could squeeze all that design work down into 1 day for each plant, or a week, or whatever, maybe we could really transform this kind of delivery model. And so the other thing that we realized we needed was Chris and all the other folks that are commercializing these amazing advanced reactors, they really have to focus on getting their first plants built. And we respect their intensity of focus and wish them success. But we can't wait to develop the market until, wait until they're done to start developing the market. And this is where our partnership with Microsoft comes in. So we said, what if we could make an online tool that coal plant owners could use to evaluate their coal plants for repowering with advanced reactors? And, that's what you get for asking questions like that, because that's what we've been working on for the past year. And we just released this on Monday last week. And Microsoft's global sales force, which is 2,000 people, are now marketing this free app to all the coal plant owners in the world to allow them to figure out what repowering their plant would look like, what the economics would look like, and so forth. So the idea is, as we're kind of bringing the technologies to the market, we're also bringing the market to the technologies. And we're not just, a coal plant owner isn't a customer for repowering. They're just a coal plant owner. We have to turn them into customers for repowering. So they have to become educated. They have to think it's a good idea. They have to see how they could deliver a project like that. And so that's what we're doing with Microsoft.
No, thank you, Eric, very much. Exciting things that are happening. Next, Elina, if you can pass on. Really excited to hear from you as we're discussing here the future of the energy markets. What are your thoughts on how Romania is dealing with the electric decarbonization and the role of nuclear and coal and so forth?
Thank you so much, Carlos, and I'm very honored and more than happy to be in such a great company. Thank you. Here's thank you for putting this together, which couldn't be more timely, but so important, including from the point of view of allowing nuclear to regain its role. Because until recently, let's speak honestly, nuclear was bow in the room, so nobody was touching nuclear, even though, in my humble opinion, if I could speak very freely among friends, it was quite ignorance, because if you are going to really get educated about what nuclear is about and what energy from nuclear is and with all the other benefits from hydrogen, the benefits for the health industry and so on and so forth, you will realize how important is nuclear in terms of not just being one of the most reliable source of energy, but actually one of the cleanest. So that science is not politics or is not a declaration. So now, with that in mind, allow me to just for a few seconds or minutes to share with you what we've been doing in Romania. I'm very proud to say that we took quite a blunt, courageous decision since 1960s. When you can imagine the pressures in our region, when everybody was pressured to go with the Russian technology. Well, we were quite courageous and we said no, and we choose to go with the North American technology. So we have two nuclear power plants. One of it is already in the advanced planning for refurbishment, so we will be giving 30 more years of life, so that means 60 years in total. And we are in preparation and in advanced planning to have two new nuclear power plants built, units 3 and 4. And alongside with that, actually was the last COP when we signed up a team agreement with NuScale to be the first one to deploy in Europe the first SMR. And that's another courageous decision that we took. And we are very proud of this partnership because we honestly believe that that is going to ensure not just the energy security of Romania or independence, but actually is allowing Romania to be a hub of energy provider in our region. So you might wonder and you might ask, why the first SMR in Europe? Why Romania? Well, I'm telling you that Romania stands ready to participate along with the US and the EU companies in promoting nuclear energy as a clean and reliable energy. And I could give you at least 5 examples why we believe that Romania and us at Nuclearelectrica, we could be a hub in our region. Firstly, we have a great experience. So it's 1, experience; 2, supply chain; 3, it's industry regulator; 4, the political and public support; and 5th, not the least, engineering schools. In terms of the experience, we are operating at the highest level in terms of the safety, more than 26 years. And Nuclearelectrica is very proud to have that track record, which is, you cannot accuse me of speaking of subjectivity. It's, if you look in any chart, you will see Nuclearelectrica top of the safety in terms of the operation. Then we have the supply chain, which is a well-developed, understanding North American technology. Then we have the industry regulator. Of course, it could give some headaches to some people, but in fact, leaving the joke apart, actually it's one of the most professional, independent regulator. And from that point of view, we are ready to share with you our experience in regulating, being, as I said, the one in Central Eastern Europe operating with North American technology. Then we have the political and public support. The political support is being consistent from the highest level. And the public support, we are now, Ludmila she's in charge with this side of our company and is doing a great job, because just recent poll is showing 87% of public support. But even with that in mind, we are not complacent. We are up front there, engaging with the local community, being proactive, because let's speak the truth. There is a big hybrid warfare happening in our region, and nuclear, it is a target with fake news, manipulation, with the SMRs, it's a lot of nonsense talking about, well, it's experimental and all that nonsense, which we know that is not true. So one lesson, if I could share with you, is don't be complacent and really be proactive as an industry to really get that political and public support. And, in terms of the training, we do have a good track record in terms of the engineering school. With NuScale, we will have a simulator in one of our leading universities. So we are taking all the necessary steps to prepare for the future, engineering and everybody operating. So in short, I do believe that Romania, through Nuclearelectrica, can play not just being a hub for NuScale's technology deployment in our region, but actually could be a hub of sharing our experience and expertise. And don't be shy on knocking on our door to really, share, because we are ready to share with you from that experience, because we do have an impeccable track record. And that's not subjectivity. Again, it's a fact. Thank you.
Oh, it's fantastic. Very exciting to see what's happening in Romania. It's a template perhaps for others to follow. So very exciting.
But can I just say to you, because
Please.
Today we just have another announcement. I'm sorry. We are very proud to announce that here at COP27, a new important step, because we were talking about the SMRs, a new important step has been taken in the SMRs deployment in Romania. So Nuclearelectrica SMR project company is called Terrapower, just signed a memorandum of understanding with Donna Lam, which is part of Beltam, to deploy in Romania the first, the SMR. And also today we joined the UN Coalition for 24/7 carbon-free energy. So in short, in 1 second, the objective of this memorandum of understanding is to support the deployment of the first SMR project in Romania, which could have a great impact also on achieving, because you are mentioning about the goals, achieving the production of green steel in Romania, which is first in Europe. And this announcement is coming after another great announcement that took place on November 9, when Secretary Kerry, alongside with the president of US Exim and our president, presented 2 letters of interest in supporting Chernovod's nuclear power plant units 3 and 4, in total of $3.5 billion. So, you know, financing is quite important in showing a long-term planning. So those 2 announcements are quite good news for us, but it's a great news for the industry as well, because it's just showing one more time that nuclear is there as a serious source of energy and clean energy and reliable energy for that matter.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that fresh news with us. That's exciting. We'll hear more about this in a minute, but perhaps passing the word to Elina here and bringing her into the conversation. Elina, you've been involved in so many projects around the world, nuclear related, and I wonder if you can maybe give us a perspective worldwide about this theme.
Sure, absolutely, Carlos. Thanks so much for including me on this panel. Really honored to be here and to work with the Clean Air Task Force on its Coal to Nuclear initiative. I'd like to tie this back a little bit to some of the themes of this COP and past COPs. I think every year we hear from developing countries their frustration with the developed world, which is not decarbonizing quickly enough. And in fact, you know, currently because of energy security issues, some countries are putting more fossil fuels online, while telling countries that historically had not been the ones contributing to climate change that they need to have this energy transition pathway. And the message from these countries, well, we need to have energy growth before we can think about energy transition. We need to have sustainable development. We need to have growing industries. And it's not just about electricity, it's about a heavy industry as well, which some of these countries are trying to build up. So how do you resolve this tension? How do you address these countries' needs for growing energy demand and sustainable energy growth, while at the same time not contributing further to climate change, the climate change catastrophe? I think there's no other word to use other than a catastrophe, given what we've seen over the past couple of years, and given the impact especially on these same developing nations. And to me, when I started working on this coal to nuclear idea, before it even really became much of a project, that really seemed like one of the silver bullets here, right? You have countries that are dependent on fossil fuels, just telling them that they should shut down their fossil fuel stations and transition to renewables, which obviously are not the right type of energy to be repurposed for a lot of these facilities because of land use requirements, because of intermittency issues when deployed by themselves. Right? That's not a sustainable pathway. Nuclear really checks a lot of boxes here. Of course, we all know about, you know, zero carbon, it is base load, all of these great things. But the fact that you can actually reuse the same site, not just the site and transmission, but potentially some of the balance of plant infrastructure that's already there. CETF has been working on this study, looking at the savings that you could have from a CapEx standpoint, also looking at some of the technical issues. How do you match the right type of coal plant? As we learned, there are dozens of types of coal plants around the world and different ones in different countries. How do you match the right type of coal plant with the right type of nuclear plant, an SMR, whether it has to be an LWR or a Gen 4, size-wise, configuration-wise, balance of plant? How do you do that? Eric and TerraPraxis are looking at a lot of that as well from an infrastructure standpoint. But also thinking about, from a policy perspective, all the things that need to happen in order to take this great blue sky idea and make it a reality, right? So in some of our countries, the US, for example, has passed a number of legislative instruments. For example, the Inflation Reduction Act. It has tax credits for clean energy facilities, both production tax credits and investment tax credits. So it's both for the developers as well as for the investors. And there's actually an add-on, a 10% add-on for deploying these clean energy facilities, which include advanced nuclear, at existing fossil fuel powered sites. But when we talk about the developing world, what do we need there, right? Because these governments are ones that are, many of them are struggling financially. They're not going to give us more tax incentives, right, to deploy nuclear at existing sites. What do we really need to do? And that's what we have to think about, really transformative solution from a financing perspective and an infrastructure perspective. We've been looking at for a long time, what can development financing institutions do as far as clean energy deployment? And to date, many of these institutions, such as the World Bank, they've kind of switched from financing oil and gas to financing more renewables, which is great. But unfortunately, they currently do not finance nuclear, with some exceptions. And they don't really have projects today that look at things like repurposing coal. They really don't. They're very focused on renewables, which is great, but it's a little bit narrow. So we need to think about other transformative things. Of course, we need to change the policies of these financial institutions. They really should be looking at repurposing coal plants in these countries, but we also need something more transformative. So CATF's been kind of supporting, I've been working on an initiative called the International Bank for Nuclear Infrastructure that would look to finance worldwide infrastructure, wholesale infrastructure, not just talking about building new reactors, but all of the infrastructure that's needed from the transmission side, from things like coal ash cleanup, for example, right? We talk about repurposing these sites, but it's easier said than done. For nuclear power plants, we have a decommissioning fund. The nuclear industry is very good about that. Before we can even start licensing a nuclear power plant, we have to have a plan how to decommission that facility when it's done in operation. Coal plants don't have those types of funds. So you have to create funding for those institutions. And that's why you really need something transformative like an international bank for nuclear infrastructure, but also develop the countries, their export credit agencies should be financing projects like that. There are lots of, over in the next part of C, there are lots of multinational financing funds and organizations and institutions. We need to take that message to them about this just transition and about the idea of coal to nuclear, coal to clean energy, and get all of those institutions involved. So I think it's an ecosystem. There's two parts to it. There's a developed world, lots of work to do there, even more work to do in the developing world. But these ideas are very much, they're not just blue sky. They can be implemented with the right mechanisms, and we need to have a real conversation on how to do it.
Yes, thank you, Elina, for those words. Indeed, a lot of work ahead for all of us. If maybe we're going to work backwards around the line here. Eric, for you, I don't know, if maybe you can, TerraPraxis and LucidCatalyst have done a lot of assessments in the last several years in terms of deployment of advanced nuclear. In terms of the economics and the costs, I wonder if you could maybe elaborate a little bit on this particular application, the challenges and maybe opportunities for coal to nuclear from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, so as Elina was saying, there's, I'm not sure that every coal plant is unique, but there are certainly a very, very large number of types of coal plants, especially in the older markets. If you look at India and China, they tend to use a more standardized approach to delivering their coal plants. But in the United States, even at a single plant, there might be 4 or 5 units, which are all completely different. Different steam temperatures, different pressures. They were built decades apart from each other. So it's not a kind of, it's not a simple problem. And furthermore, if you want to achieve really low costs, you need to have a kind of manufacturing-based delivery model. So can't be designing the plant each time. The plant has to be made almost entirely out of things that can be made in a factory and delivered and assembled in a kind of factory-like way on site. And we've done a lot of work on what this will do for the costs, and it's very, very good. So the good news is that we think with the the delivery model that we're designing and working on with Microsoft and Schneider and Bryden Wood and a number of other parties, that it will be possible to repower coal plants in the United States for $2,000 a kilowatt. So that means reusing the turbine that's there and building a heat source and a steam generator to make steam that matches the conditions of the turbine that exists there. And by reducing the scope of what's nuclear, so if you are only building a heat source and you're not, your turbine island is not involved in the safety case for your safety license with the NRC, then you can use that without turning it into a nuclear quality turbine. And this reduces the scope of what needs to be built and regulated by the NRC. And if you then can standardize that, and the way we're looking at doing that is using a seismic isolation system. So normally the reason that people designing nuclear plants don't design really highly standardized designs is because they genuinely don't know where the plants are going to go in the future. And that's a reasonable response to that situation. But in this case, for our project, we know where every single plant is going to go because they're going to coal plant sites. So what we're doing with Microsoft and the University of Buffalo is developing a super site. So we're developing a database of all the site conditions at all the coal plants that we want to repower in the United States. And we're able to build a kind of aggregated set, a superset of all those sites. And we'll be able to validate our seismic isolation designs, our hazard analysis, temperature stuff, extreme wind events. All of that data will be included in this super site. And so we'll be able to design for those 500 or 600 sites and be confident that we're meeting the requirements for those sites. So that's a different approach to designing as well. And the system that we're designing it's kind of like a kitchen that has a slot for the microwave. And my friends here are developing the microwaves. So we see that we can make a modified version of the heat source island that is configurable to the different suppliers of advanced reactors. So then they will become suppliers of manufactured components that are skid mounted and easy to deliver. I mean, they can keep developing plants as well. This is not, but for the customers that want to do repowering the way we're working on it, they will basically be looking for a microwave that fits in the slot for that design. And this means that the advanced reactor companies can move to a much higher volume manufacturing model, which means they're going to have much better profit margins, much lower costs, and be able to scale up to supply many, many more units per year. So we believe that all of these things can help with the cost. And there's one more thing. The Evaluate tool that I mentioned is really the first app in a whole sort of suite of apps. And our goal with those applications is to fully automate the design and licensing process for repowering coal plants. So instead of hiring a group of consultants to come in and study everything and think all these original thoughts and then create an RFP and get a bunch of people to do a specialized design and then write up some custom applications to the NRC based on that, that's all extremely expensive and slow. We want to make it like I was describing that the data centers are built. You configure using an automatic configurator, you choose the heat source supplier, you produce automated applications to the NRC, those get sent off, and the whole thing can be done by a small group of people, and it can be done in less than a year to get the project going. And then you'll have a 2 or 3 year construction period. So that's how we think we can, and that's not available today, but that's the goal, and we're inviting a lot of industry participants to participate with us so they can be part of this solution as well.
Well, thanks for that, Eric. Thank you very much. Clayton, around the same vein, but we heard about different models to deploy nuclear technology to coal. Sometimes we call it replacement, other repowering, depending on how much you want to use the infrastructure. I wonder if you could elaborate more about NuScale being a light water reactor technology, a lot of innovation into the design. How do you see the application of your design into a coal plant?
Yeah, so our designs, as I mentioned earlier, the uniqueness around the emergency planning zone, but to Eric's point, we're able to come in and put in a 6-module or a 12-module or an 8-module flexible plant to adjust to the grid accommodations at the site, because that's one of the restrictions. We have to be conscious of what the power abilities are for that particular coal plant. The good thing about the NuScale design is that it's modified from, you can flex it from 77 megawatts all the way up to 924. So we can adjust accordingly to what's needed on the output. Putting the facility in is something that we can do adjacent to the existing plant. We can connect to the administrative buildings, we can connect to the turbine halls accordingly, make some adjustments, connect to the grid. We estimate it's about a 20 to 35% gain of savings from reusing the infrastructure on a current site. So that's a big plus. Repurposing the people obviously is an important aspect, but I think, to me, one of the key points still is going back to having this emergency planning zone that allows you to truly stay within the confines of that original area, and I think that's pretty significant. I really like, what Eric's working on is certainly those type of tools is what we need as a group to be successful in deployment, because it's correct. I mean, today it takes a long time. The siting process, the EPC design, the constructability, et cetera. Our construction period is 36 months once the site is ready to connect to the grid. But I really do believe that having processes that can accelerate how we can implement the entire project is a benefit for everybody. And that's a tool that these guys are developing, and that I guess our microwaves can support now. Yeah. So we have a new term now. So thanks, Eric. We're rebranded as a microwave, but no, it's good. But no, thanks.
Thanks, Clayton.
A cool microwave.
A cool
yeah.
microwave. Okay, that's good. Chris, so we're looking at the TerraPower project in Wyoming as in the forefront, right? Pushing a new window and opportunity for nuclear industry, particularly in the U.S. There's a lot of focus on the technical aspect, the commercial aspect, but the community engagement aspect is another one that perhaps can make a difference. You alluded to a little bit on that, on the socioeconomic impact of such a project, but I wonder if you can elaborate more on how TerraPower is working directly with the community and making a difference.
Sure. And just to kind of complete the thought that Eric and Clayton began, you do need to think about lowest system cost, right? And Eric was pointing to that, and lots of models. Yours and others from MIT are telling us the best way to get the lowest system cost of a carbon-free grid is with 20 to 30% nuclear, which is hundreds of plants in the U.S. That's why we're so often with NuScale and others, we're side by side, because no one of us is going to be successful alone. And so moving to Wyoming, we, again, last year launched the project in Kemmerer, Wyoming. That project is up to about 900 engineers working on the project, and we visit Kemmerer, Wyoming, or Cheyenne, the capital, pretty often, because we want to keep the energy up, because it's an EPC project. Construction hasn't started yet, so I'm regularly in Wyoming doing town halls and things like that, explaining that there's 900 engineers at TerraPower and Hitachi and at Bechtel working on their design, and that next year some limited construction is starting. And it's also a trust building exercise with the community, really. As I mentioned, when that first coal plant was announced for closure, that was something that really could have crushed a community of 2,700 people. And when we go to Wyoming and talk to communities, you end up feeling a lot of weight on your shoulders. Okay, we have our board, we have the DOE overseeing our project, but I'd hazard to say the most pressure I feel is when I'm talking to a community who's relying on us delivering a project. And it's that one project, but three weeks ago with Pacific Corp and Assistant Secretary Huff in Washington, we announced a study with Pacific Corp to do not just the Naughton plant, but 5 additional plants by 2035. So, you know, that will be our launch pad. And some of the system modeling that Eric was referring to, you know, a big part of this study for the first 6 plants is working those 6 plants into the right sites within Pacific Corp's system. And need to remember too, as is the case around the world, a lot of these grids are heavily regulated. So you have fragmented, often fragmented regulatory structures in the different US states. So as you work on 6 plants, you might need to go to you know, multiple different electricity regulators. And actually we would like to see more common approaches for what is a pretty fragmented process now. So again, some, you know, encouragement about what Eric was discussing. So a little bit more on the community. When we talked to Governor Gordon in Wyoming last year, and we said, hey, there's 4 candidate sites, we did town hall meetings in each community. And when I say Wyoming has a high energy IQ, I say that because they're a big coal producing state. They have multiple power plants. They export a lot of electricity. They even sell electricity to California. It's a state of 400,000 citizens. So they know power, okay? They know big construction projects. They're not afraid of them. And you might imagine when we talk to 4 communities about siting a nuclear plant in their community that there was a lot of opposition. They had great questions, okay, about safety of nuclear and, you know, are we fission or fusion? And we spent time with people explaining that. But I'll tell you, we had 4 communities who competed to be the first to have an advanced nuclear project. So to anyone who thinks, oh, nuclear project siting is, you know, going to be the toughest thing, there are communities that would welcome projects like this, and Wyoming is one of them. We hear about so much impatience in that Mountain West region about, you know, when can we have a plant too, and you know, NuScale's the same. There's a huge opportunity there, and you know, our approach is let's prove it out. Let's show we can do it in Wyoming. Let's demonstrate it there. And even before those 6 plants are built out in Wyoming and Utah, you know, we'll be going to the global market too. But you know, our strategy at TerraPower is to have that reference plant and that's licensed by the NRC, that's built, that has that cost and schedule benchmark. And you know, we see this as being something that is going to help the U.S. You know, get through that energy transition with coal to nuclear, but Europe and you know, many other places in the world.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. I mean, I think we are learning a lot from your project because I think we're in a new era with nuclear. It's not just about showing up in a place and building, right? We need to build that relationship with the community. So that's we're watching and learning from you. So thank you for that. And turning to Anna here now, you know, again, so excited to hear all that's going on with Romania, all the announcements that you had just shared. Just curious, what makes Romania such a you know, a great committed partner for advanced nuclear?
Because we are the best in the region. Short answer. Firstly, again, really thank you, and a great honor to really listen to everybody, and so much to learn about. Why makes Romania so unique? Because, as I was mentioning, along with our experience on the large nuclear power plants, so we have the 2 and now building the other two is the CANDU technology. We've been the one signing up with NuScale to deploy first in Europe, and we believe that by accommodating the first deployment of SMRs in Europe, we aim, and in my humble opinion, without being too subjective, I strongly believe that we will and we can be the strategic and play that strategic role of energy security from the strategic point of view in Central Eastern Europe, in our region, but beyond our region, in the Three Seas region, for at least a few reasons. And we are aiming, and as I said, I honestly believe that we will be a catalyst for the SMRs in our region, being the promoter of the benefits of the SMR technology. And here, you know, please support our efforts, because it's not an easy fight to fight the misinformation and the fake news. And you know, listening to you is great, all those endeavors, and we are grateful because we are the beneficiary, but it takes two to tango, and in this effort it needs to be a joint effort because it's benefiting everybody. So practically to promoting the SMRs and the nuclear, but the new SMRs technology as being a clean, safe and a reliable source of energy solution in our region. We aim and we will be the preferred operator because we have all the skills there due to our excellent experience, our excellent know-how, our excellent track record in operating, as I said earlier, more than 26 years of safe at the highest level. And as we were talking that energy, and it's a reality that energy is security, we aim to be a regional energy security provider, as we are doing as we speak with Republic of Moldova, for example. And here again, you play a major role, and obviously us partnering with NuScale, it's allowing us to be that exporter of energy security in the region. We aim to be a base of supporting the production and assembly components of the SMRs, and from that point of view to be that hub of the supply chain, and obviously to be that hub for preparation and training of future operators and specialists, because the human resources, it's so important to have the education of the new specialists according to the new technology. So if I will just by ending, just to share with you in 1 second the lesson learned from us that might help other developing countries. So practically nuclear energy requires long-term strategic and commitment, and you need to have that in mind, and we've been having that since 1960s. And from that point of view, it's including the financing, because, Elina, you've been touching on that. We've been fighting very heavily at the EU level to have the nuclear included on the taxonomy. But, you know, the efforts needs to continue to educate the financial institutions and the private sector, private financial institutions as well, that nuclear, it is paying off, even though at the beginning it might sound expensive, but when you do the calculation, when you do it, that's math, so it's paying off the investment. Then you need to have a strong and independent regulator, as I was saying earlier, because it is important to ensure the compliance with the highest safety standards. That's paramount. Then you need to have the mutual beneficiary, the international partner. In other words, be wise. Who are you partnering with? We've been, as I said, very proud and very courageous from 1960s to go with the North American technology, even though it wasn't easy, but we've been proven to be right to do that. And then, participation of local industry in implementing a new technology, that's crucial. That's another lesson that we've been learned. The legal and financial ecosystem needs to be conducive to facilitate investments on a large-scale infrastructure of new and existing ones, and not least a wise and a competent promoter. And from that point of view, I'm very proud to say that Nuclearelectrica is that one, not just in Romania, but in our region. So I will close by saying that we are ready to share with you our experience. Just reach out to us because I do believe that the nuclear energy is going to be that strategic component of energy security, not just in our region, which is a region that has the challenges, as you all know, with the war in Ukraine. But I think all over the world, nuclear is going to play that strategic component of securing that energy mix, a balanced mix in energy, where it's been proven to be not just the clean one, but a reliable source of energy as well. So thank you.
No, great words, and thank you for summarizing our feeling as well. So thank you for that, Anna, and indeed, what a great opportunity that we have ahead of us, and for the nuclear industry to make a even bigger impact in the decarbonization of the global energy sector through replacing coal plants with nuclear technology. I would like, please help me thank the speakers today for their insights. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank the audience for being here and participating, and I would like to encourage you to continue to follow CATF's schedule for the week. We have a lot of exciting and meaningful side events planned for the rest of the week, so hope you can come back and join us. With that, thank you very much and have a good afternoon.